Welcome back to Season 6 of the Changing Earth podcast with author Sara F. Hathaway and co-host Chen Gibson. Blending survival, fiction, and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway and Chen Gibson.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 207, season 6, episode 7. Hey Chen, man, we missed you last week.
I know. I'm so sorry. Life happened. That's what happened to me.
Yep, life happens.
Happened.
I missed recording one episode 1 week in the whole time I've been podcasting that I didn't get it out on time. That's what
I was so excited to hang with you guys and Dale and Lisa, but since I knew you were in good company, I was like, a friend asked me, well, I had car problems, was stuck out of town, and my friends that I was staying with, they asked me to help do some forestry work.
Nice,
so
good.
I kind of felt guilty that I'm like, you know.
Good, at least you were sweating with the chicken.
No, I gotta go make a phone call and do a shit. So I figured since you already had Dale and Lisa lined up.
Yeah, we didn't talk too much smack.
Yeah, I bet. I told the pre-show. I was so excited this week to listen because I could be a listener again, and it was me talking.
Yep.
What a disappointment.
Yep. You know, preppers do things early, so we're very prepared for the shows. We're a little bit ahead on recorded time, so
I was
so
excited
like everybody
to
else.
be a listener.
Well, you'll get there this week. So yeah, pre-show, guys, give you a little tip. If you remember, head on over there and check it out. But I was talking about my awesome workout that I just did on Friday. So that was nice, relaxing, and enjoyable. And my instructor is just so nice, and man, he's just so easy on me. It's just
let me get the dictionary up and look up enjoyable and relaxing. Make sure I'm thinking about the same thing.
Oh, that's Sarah's enjoyable, relaxing. And then, you know, my mouth didn't get me in any trouble. So, you know.
No, Erica, it did not.
Classic. So other than that, I've just been gardening. You know, my garden's growing nice and big now. Tomatoes are getting all big. Cucumbers are starting to come off. And so we'll be doing some pickling. And then, I told you, I'm getting ready to lay down the audio for Hope on the Horizon. So,
nice.
Yeah. So Chen gets to beta listen that one. Yeah. So now I'll try them. No, we can't share anything on the show, so I can't even turn around your little head game of trying to get stuff out of me. So what have you been up to over there?
Well, like I showed you that one picture of my studio. Awesome. Very, very cropped. So I sent her a picture. I'm doing some remodeling at my home office, and I sent her a picture, and she goes, "Oh, it's so neat." And then I took her like a panorama.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, your office is way cleaner than mine. Mine's just like stacks of papers everywhere, notebooks.
Yeah, so I've been changing some stuff around here, and it's just I have like a little 2-foot square that I can work in for tonight's show, but that's it.
Nice. Well, hey, you got your spot now. Yeah, I saw, the mic was all there. And
yep. I went to the dark side, got an iMac, and
yeah, I had to chuckle a little.
Yeah.
That's all right. Preferences. People love those. People love their PCs, so it's just kind of,
I've been both sides of the world. For me, it just, I don't care. Just got to work.
Oh, so let's talk the book a little bit, because I didn't get to talk too much to Dale and Lisa about it, because Lisa hasn't.
Slackers.
Slackers, and she was gonna do some catch up, but she was looking for the right time because she gets so wrapped up into my books, she never wants to put them down when she starts. So she's like, I gotta have the right moment, So I'm like, okay. So last week, Swenson.
Hey, I can give her a coupon to listen.
There you go. Well, I told Dale I wasn't going to waste one on him because he never. I'm like, I'll just invite you to the special people Dropbox if that's the case, because you're not listening anyway, man. I'm not wasting those on him. I did get some given away though.
Yeah.
Yeah, finally got a giveaway going over on my Facebook site.
Nobody's emailed me yet and asked, so I guess they're afraid. I scared them.
You did scare them. You were like, man, I'm gonna make you work for it. They're like, oh no, we gotta
They
do
went
extra
to
work.
Sarah, she's giving them out.
Yep. Yeah. And then, me, I never asked for extra work. Like, I wouldn't ever do something like that. So.
No.
All right. Well, last week, Swenson was kind enough to volunteer a place for Erica to stay until she could be moved to the Supreme Generals. So.
How nice.
I know. He's such a nice guy. He's like, hey, I got an extra room. You're not ready yet? Yeah. Chivalry is not dead.
It's just contorted.
Yeah. So, but at least he took the dang shocker collar off of her. Just going back with the chain instead of the shock collar. I think I would like that better myself. I don't know. No random button push, at least.
You never know when it's coming.
Right? Yeah.
Because she was always trying to like run up so she didn't get yanked on the chain, and she just paced herself. So she kind of had a little tiny bit of morsel of control. Yeah. But with this shot collar,
no.
If they got that control in their hand, you got nothing.
That would be so horrible. Like, that's just horribleness, the shot collar. So this week, we're catching back up with Vince and his crew as they prepare to make their way across the Ogallala. Ogallala. I just like saying it. It's pretty fun. It's like banana, Ogallala. And so Ogallala, before you started researching for this show, you said you didn't know about the Ogallala sitting in there.
I did not. And I just I figured it was something you made up in the book. I didn't like.
Oh, really?
Put two together. Yeah. It didn't like when I was like reading the story originally, not like this time around, but originally back in the day when I read the story.
Yeah. Cause it collapses.
I was just like, Sarah's making stuff up again.
Yeah. It collapses in without land.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to take a look at it today and look at, the realities of if something like that could happen. So, alrighty. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into chapter 7 of The Endless Night. Chapter 7. The afternoon of September 14th. This all used to be under the land? Daniel marveled, staring out at the expanse of the Ogallala Lake. Vince watched his youngest child standing on the edge of the cliff that went down to the lake, amazed by how much he had grown. Vince couldn't help but think of his mother. Yup, they used to sink huge pipes into the ground to pump the water up to the land. All the quakes caused the dirt on top to fall to the bottom. You remember the influx of people at the camp, right? Vince asked the boy. Yeah, I remember, Daniel replied. Well, there you go, Vince answered. It's all contaminated, though, Danny, so don't go drinking from it. Makes sense, Daniel admitted, softly petting Trucker, Dexter's Rottweiler, standing vigilantly at his side. Star sat with Nancy. They had both become unusually quiet these days. Most everyone Star loved in this life was dead, and now Erica was gone too. Nancy was in an entirely different position. After the Great Quake, there was no way of finding her son. Much to his wife's dismay, Erica's brother took a job that moved him to Canada a few years before the quake. At the FEMA camp, at least she had Erica and the kids. When she found out Erica and her family were going to attempt an escape, she took a position at a textile factory in Dallas. She stayed with a longtime friend of hers, Brett. His daughter was a landowner. Nancy delighted in helping take care of Brett's grandchildren, but it wasn't the same as her own. Matthew Tweed, the director of the Las Vegas FEMA camp, ended that. Now her daughter was gone too. There was no guarantee they would be able to bring her home. Her focus had to turn to her grandchildren. They needed the support now more than ever. It was obvious to her that Vince wasn't going to do it. He was checked out most of the time, so she tried to fill that role. Bennett and Gear came back from the ticket stand with bewildered looks on their faces. 4 days, Bennett told Nicholton as he approached. What? Nancy replied, overhearing his comment. That's crazy. We could drive around faster, Penny interjected. But we need fuel to do that, Greg retorted. Exactly, Graham agreed. Okay, what are we going to do? Burgess asked. Vince stared out at the people on the streets. He kept hoping that one of them would be Erica. What's going on here, Bennett? He said slowly, noticing people in chains and an unusual number of prostitutes on the street. The gangs took over law enforcement when we moved north with most of our arsenal, Burgess answered for him. There was nothing we could do for this many people. The feds have been buying up refugees because they only have access to one camp within their border, Nicholton replied. But Sabrina said they weren't letting refugees in the north, Vince said, recalling a story he heard from the leaders of a rebel group in Colorado. They're not going into the central region, and the north is trying to maintain as much farmland as possible, Nicholton answered. Well, I'm real pleased about the evolutionary tale, but I'd love to have a drink right now if we aren't shoving off anytime soon, Gear stated. His large frame towered above the other men. I'm with you, Graham attested, rubbing his beard. Now's not the time to be drinking, Bennett told him. We have to come up with a plan. Sounds like the plan is to wait 4 days, Gear responded. I think we should be strategizing rather than drinking, Bennett countered. I don't see that we have much else to do right now, Cole acquiesced. Come on, Bennett. We've had some long days. If we have to wait, why not do it with a beer in our hands, Nancy agreed. Sorry, Patrick. I'm headed for a beer too, Nicholton interjected. Come with us and relax, Graham suggested to Bennett and the rest of the group. Come on, bro, Greg urged Vince. Let's have a drink and take a load off. We have to wait anyhow. All right, Vince agreed. The large group entered the bar and took over the back 3 tables in the corner. The waitress brought them pitchers of beer, and even Vince had to admit that the cold beverage was a welcome relief. Hey, Bennett, Gear asked him jovially. What, Gear? What's sticky and brown, Gear asked. I don't know what, Bennett answered. A stick, Gear said, laughing at him. The group laughed as well, and then Bennett asked him, What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back? Gear looked at him confused. A stick, Greg interjected, stealing the punchline. Bennett laughed at Gear with him. Bennett, what do you call a fake noodle? Gear asked. An impasta, he replied, chuckling with the group. Gear, what's the downside of being a redneck kid at Christmas? Bennett asked him. Gear shrugged in response. You just have one set of grandparents to get presents from, Bennett responded, laughing hard with Nicholton. Oh, now that's hitting below the belt, Greg teased, encouraging the banter. Bennett, what's the difference between a joke and 3 dicks? Gear asked. Bennett looked at him confused. Your mom can't take a joke, Gear hooted. Bennett launched from his chair at Gear while everyone snickered at the joke. The commotion drew the attention of everyone else in the bar. Nicholton and Graham broke the 2 men up, and they were drinking and telling more jokes as a black man walked towards the group. Vince? Vince Moore, the man called. Vince looked and saw Melvin Sanders approaching. How the hell are you, my friend? Melvin asked. I've been better, he stated. Where's the missus? Melvin asked, looking around. Vince looked down for a moment before he looked back up with tears in his eyes. The feds took her, Vince said, trying to keep his voice flat. What? Melvin asked. Why didn't a runner come down to let command know? Cassidy was killed, Melvin, Vince told him. Militia command is scrambling right now, and the mercs aren't raising a finger. We were the first ones headed south, Vince explained. Who are you here with? He wondered. You know Star, and this is my son Daniel, Vince explained. My best friend and his wife Greg and Penny. Bennett, Nicholton, and Burgess all joined us. And these 3 men are fighters from the Denver area, Graham, Gear, and Ned. Victoria Gleason is a friend of ours from the Vegas camp. This is Melvin. He helped us to get to Texas when we left Minnesota. What are you doing out here? Vince wondered. I'm operating a ferry. It's a great place to get info, Melvin explained. Plus, Mr. Dixon wanted me to ID the leaders of the gangs in town, so when we're done fighting the feds, we can restore order. Vince remembered Governor Dixon from his time with Erica in Texas. He thought Dixon was a fine leader, and Vince respected his honesty. Mr. Dixon had law and order firmly under control in the free state of Texas. And if he thought this was the best course of action, then Vince couldn't argue that fact. You're running a ferry? Vince asked as Bennett joined his side. Yeah, Melvin responded. Can you give us a ride, Vince wondered. Sure, Melvin replied. You got a vehicle? Yeah, Vince said. Turning towards Bennett, Melvin said, I'm impressed you came, Bennett. You're a man of your word. Erica showed me how important family is, and the Moores are my family. I'd never let them down, Bennett responded. Melvin shook his hand firmly. Nice to officially meet you. Likewise, Bennett replied. I'm headed out to get the boat ready now. Get your vehicle and head that direction. Give them this. Melvin handed Vince a woven bracelet. Gear brought the vehicle around, and after presenting the token from Melvin, they were ushered onto the ferry. This load was full of handlers and slaves, but they were headed east within the hour. This is sick, Nancy commented to Penny as she looked at the sad faces on the boat. It really is, Penny agreed. There's more people than food. The Central Region feeds the masses in exchange for slaves, Melvin explained. We don't have the manpower to stop it down here right now. Melvin, Erica would have come this way within the last few days. Staff Sergeant Merkley, the Lieutenant General's son, would have been with her, Vince explained. Melvin looked at him blankly. I don't know the Lieutenant General's son, but yesterday something strange did happen. A few guys were transporting this girl through here. I'm going to be honest here, Vince. The only reason I took notice is because the girl's handlers had a burlap sack over her head. She didn't have a shirt on either. I made the guy put a jacket on her. I couldn't help but watch them get off the boat and say a prayer for the girl. That asshole had her on a leash, a metal chain around her neck. Anyway, this girl that was standing by her says to her handler that the woman in the hood said she was Erica Moore. She laughed with her handler over the idea. I didn't believe that it could be true either. He shook his head, cursing himself for not acting on the feeling then. If Erica didn't have a shirt on, you would have seen her scars. Did she have scarred skin? Vince asked. She sure did. I noticed them when I brought the jacket. She also had a fresh wound. It looked like a T whipped into her, and since her handler carried a whip, I figured it was his doing, Melvin confirmed. Son of a, he cursed. We just don't have the forces to control what's going on here. But you're a part of it, Vince lashed out in anger, looking at Melvin. You take them back and forth. If I don't, someone else will. And then we wouldn't be in the know about the key players, Melvin explained. Vince looked at Bennett in disbelief. Do you think they made it to the Central Region by now? Bennett asked, changing the subject. He hated the hard truth that Melvin was explaining as much as Vince, but he knew the reality of it. Sure, it's only a 6-hour walk or a 20-minute drive from the port in Texas, Melvin replied. Vince, you've got to get her back quick. Those guys were not nice dudes. I would have done more if I thought my team could have taken them. One of them shot me twice, Vince agreed. Holy shit, you're lucky to be here, Melvin commented. He stared out at the water for a while. Vince, do you have another son? I do, Vince answered. Where is he? Melvin wondered. I don't know, Vince said honestly. Why? There was this boy that came through 3 days before Erica. He looks so much like her, I even had to ask. He said his name was just in case, Melvin told him. Vince looked at Bennett again. His heart pounded knowing his son was still alive, or was then. Who was he with? Vince asked. Another young man with dark hair and a handler named Jasper. They were transporting a load of cargo across, Melvin explained. I haven't seen Jasper since then. They were with a slaver? Nancy asked. Yes, ma'am, Melvin replied. They're trying to get to Johnny's dad, Star suggested. I think you're right, Bennett said. I had a feeling. I did too, Vince agreed. Where are you guys headed? Melvin asked. We're going to Dallas. I have an old friend that used to be involved in the Fed's communication systems there, Vince explained. I'll get a message to Mr. Dixon. We can put our resources within the Central Region on it, Melvin concluded. Thanks, buddy, Vince said, shaking his hand. We got your back, Melvin assured him. They landed in Texas and headed off down the highway towards Dallas. Wait, so Melvin really gives them a whole bunch of information here at the end.
Yeah, see? Pays to go to the bar once in a while.
Right? Run into the right people there and get your ride across. How did you like the jokes?
Oh, man.
The bar jokes.
It still cracked me up. I was just laughing. I remember the first time I was texting you. Oh my God!
I love the
You
redneck.
didn't just say that joke.
Yeah. But there's so much darkness in this book. Like there's very little sunny spots, So I
We have the
definitely had
ones you
to.
can share with your kids, a stick,
Yeah,
and the ones you might not want to.
exactly. Yep. Those are the ones to bring up. And then the other ones are a little bit more appropriate at other times.
It's funny. They were all good though.
Yeah. And they're definitely like the little sunny spot to get everybody smiling and cheered up a little after all the bad stuff that's going down. But Melvin was definitely a good find for them at that point. And how would you feel about that one? Wouldn't you just be kicking the heck out of yourself? Like she was right there.
Right there.
And
Both.
yeah.
Her and Dex, right?
Yeah, both. Yeah, but he had never met Dexter before. Because in Battle for the South, Dexter was with the mercenary army when Vince and Erica went with Melvin down south.
Oh, yes, that's
right.
But didn't he say he looked familiar? Or he
looked like Erica. Yeah.
He
looked so much like her. He was like, dude, you could be a son of somebody I know, right?
Yeah, I like the part where they were like, how could you do that? And he's like, well, I was gathering information. That was
right. I mean,
kind of working like a spy, an insider.
Yeah, and you'd have to at that point when you have everything spread out so far that you can't possibly take care of everything all at once, So you'd have to have your people with just gathering information on the inside and then moving your forces to where it's appropriate. Tough. It's going to get tougher before it gets better. So that is the story of the changing earth. I'm thinking real serious about this too. I want to throw this by you. I want to throw this by my listeners as well. I'm thinking about packaging the first 4 books as the origin story. Changing Earth origin. And then the second 4 books as the Changing Earth, the Federal Republic of America.
Nice.
Yeah, because it's 2 different villains, and that one would start with Dark Days in Denver.
Makes sense. It'll work.
So if anybody out there started the series with Dark Days in Denver, I'd love to hear from you about, if it was a good starting spot and you still understood what the story was going on.
Right, how it kind of holds its own.
Yeah, exactly. Because I try to write them so that anybody who hasn't read the series could pick them up and read any of the books and understand what's going on. Maybe not at the depth of people who have been following the series, but still really enjoy the story. So I'm wondering if it actually works, because I'd like to start from there. And then I could do, the compilation books that they do.
Yeah.
And do 2 big books worth all the books inside. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm throwing that around right now.
Well, I just like to see a new book come in front of me.
I'm making time to lay down the audio. You just have to be patient like everybody else.
Evil, making us wait like that.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on 8 right now too, so I don't have a title for that one, but I'm working on it right now. Some people start with the title. I can't. It pops out along the way.
Just kind of forms.
Exactly. So let's get into the Ogallala. So, yeah. See, I just like saying the word, the Ogallala. It's like Lake Titicaca.
Jeez.
It's true, though. Some words are just fun to say. Or beluga whale.
Mess.
It's an author thing.
Mess.
It's an author thing. I like words. All right, so the Ogallala is this huge aquifer system that exists underneath. It stretches from the Texas Panhandle, the northern part of the Texas Panhandle, all the way up to the southern end of South Dakota. And basically, it's like all under Nebraska. Like Nebraska sits all over the Ogallala Reservoir. And then parts of Colorado, parts of Oklahoma. And in my story, I just mapped it out where it actually was on the map, and then drew the water in there. One day I might actually share my map with everybody. But
That'd be fun.
yeah. I just need like a good artist that it could put it together, because right now it's all like my scribble notes, So I'd want to make it a little bit more presentable. So anyhow, regardless, it does exist. It is this huge reservoir that sits underneath there. It's comprised mostly of poorly sorted clay and silt and sand and gravel with groundwater filling up the spaces. So it was formed back in the millions of years ago, the Pliocene or whatever. It was these deep rivers. So the sedimentary rock is down there. And then these rivers were kind of filled up, and they still hold all this water. And it used to, back in the day, receive a recharge from the Rockies, but that's been cut off. So now it only recharges from rainfall and snowfall.
Cut off by human?
No,
cut off
naturally.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, by the earth just naturally changing and whatnot. So now it's been it's only replenished from surface water. Some areas of the Ogallala is like 500 feet down, like deepness, but most of it's only like 50 to 300 feet down. So it's actually pretty close to like surface level.
To the surface, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually not too bad. And
like a 4 or 5 story building. That's not that far down.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, and then the depth of the reservoir itself in that ground. So 1,000, like the thickness, that depth that's underground is like biggest in Nebraska, and it's like 1,000 feet down. So it starts at the 50 to 300 mark, and then
it's
goes
like
for
the depth of the reservoir.
Yeah, the depth of the reservoir, right. So that's like 2/3 of that whole reservoir is under Nebraska, and that's why in my story Nebraska's gone, because it fell in.
It's a big lake.
That's a big lake, right? And then 10% of the mega holding water is under Texas, and 10% of it is under Kansas. And from what I found, and I'm a Michigan girl, so this made a lot of sense to me, the size of it is like the capacity of Lake Huron. It's one of the Great Lakes.
The Great Lakes, yeah.
Yeah. So Lake Huron's pretty darn big, and it's about the size of that underground.
Imagine getting the Great Lake form like just overnight.
Right.
There it is.
And those lakes are actually pretty cool to study as well.
They're like miniature seas. I mean, they're not miniature seas. They're like inland seas. Yeah,
they are. It takes like a full day to go across Lake Michigan.
And they've got weather and waves and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's no joke over there.
Yeah, it's serious. And Lake Erie is called Lake Erie because it is eerie place to be there. Sometimes it comes like the waves come at you from all directions at once. It's not like predictable pattern like the ocean is. Right? Well, It's really a lot of boats have sunk there. So anyway, the Ogallala is basically a Great Lake underground in the middle of our country. It's kind of cool. And they've been using the heck out of it, right? So they basically started pumping it after 1940, after the war. They figured out how to make bigger pumps and like hook up engines basically to pump so they could pump out a lot of water. And it provides nearly all of the water for the Great Plains areas. So that's why so many people have been able to move into the Great Plains area, is because of the use of the Ogallala Reservoir.
So a lot of it's for irrigation?
Majority of it's for irrigation.
Yeah,
but that's where all their residential water comes from too. And like any industries that are going on there, That's where it's coming from. It supports a fifth of total production of wheat, corn, cotton, and cattle in our country. And that's 46% in Nebraska, 30% in Texas, and 14% in Kansas. So it's like huge for our country. It's a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. The USGS has some great maps. So what the information that we're going to present later, the maps are spectacular. I'm so glad you sent me that link because I didn't even have maps like that. Awesome.
Yeah, some of those showing the depletion.
Yes.
There's some red that's scary. Big pieces of red.
Right? Yeah, especially towards Texas and that, where it wasn't as deep. They don't have as much mass to work with. So they blame a lot of the depletion on the circle waters. The circle waters, they use like
yeah.
Right? They go around in a circle.
The irrigation, yeah.
Yeah.
They have the faucet in the middle and the big wheels that go around on a Richter set. Yeah.
Yeah, and just hoses everything. Oh, it's crazy. There's been like 100-foot decline, and it's 2.7 feet a year that we lose to water there. One aspect I found kind of interesting. So there's lots of water that's stored in these unsaturated zones, they call them. And so they've been trying to like pump these areas with air to blow the water into areas that they can actually use it in. So, right.
Kind of
like
it sounds good on paper.
Right. And it works good.
And like says about it.
Exactly. Every time we're changing things. We were talking about the Barrier Reef Islands right before the show. So everybody go check that out. But, it's the same thing when you try to change something for the benefit, the repercussions can be.
Yeah. The human mind can't really see the big picture.
Right. Yeah. And I don't even know that. Sometimes I think it's beyond our comprehension because we don't know. So it's like, oh, let's try it. See what happens.
I want to back up a second. So just like scale, like most of the, like subdivisions now, you have a little like postcard piece of land that you build your house on. That's what, a fraction of an acre, right? Not even a quarter acre probably. And that Ogallala, the reservoir, like 112 million acres.
Yeah.
In one of these articles.
Yep.
Like if somebody gets like an acre of land to build their house and they think they got a little big mansion going on. 112 million acres.
Yeah. It's huge. It's like our whole center of our country.
Yeah.
We could be a donut, I mean, literally, if it fell in. Okay, so also the chemical contaminants, because they're using it for farming so much, makes great farmlands. So they're wondering, how much is that really affecting it? And it's increasing the nitrate levels. And the, Food and Drug Administration says it's acceptable levels. It's not that big of a deal.
Of course.
But you got to wonder. I mean, and down south again in Texas and Oklahoma and that, it's worse because of the lack of depth to it. Where Nebraska has a lot more water, so it can absorb it better. It's interesting stuff.
Anything live in those water? Any fish or anything down there?
I don't think so. It's like
not that I was scuba diving in it. I mean, I didn't see any in the articles.
Right. So from what I understand, like when you picture it in your mind, you would be picturing like a cavern with water.
Yeah.
Right. But like the reality of it is it's this soil that's just like
a sponge
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Like a sponge.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's all filled up with water in that soil. So that brings us into conservation methods. So it's really important for people to be conserving down there. So they're trying new methods of like farming that involved having moisture level sensors in the soil so they don't overwater. Using pivot sprinklers instead of the center pivot irrigation ones, and then planting dry earth so that instead of saturating the soil first, and using more space between plants. So if you're in that area and you're concerned about it, there's lots of conservation sites out there. Just start doing research. It's not hard information to find on how to minimize your water usage there. But so we were talking about how it's the soil that's filled with water. Well, when you start removing the water, the water creates volume, right, in the soil. So when you start removing that water, what do you think happens to the land above it?
Just kind of crumbles and gives in.
Right? And that's happening a lot in certain areas of California because I've been doing that. And so we know it's reality that.
Did you read the one article about well, going to the right coast, Florida? Remember in 2010 they had a freeze coming. So like I don't know if people, so like if there's a freeze coming, they irrigate the like the citrus crops. They spray water to try it alters the temperature so it doesn't freeze if there's water on the plants. So they did that, and they created 110 sinkholes because of that one attempt to mitigate freezing.
On
110 sinkholes that one January.
Yeah. Florida is definitely well known for sinkholes.
Yep.
They are the super sponge. You know, they're like Michigan too. They just kind of float on the water. So that's let's pull it all out and blast it on the top. Well, guess what? Like,
see what happens.
Yeah, what supports the earth underneath? So that's the sinkholes. And there's the kind of soil that is most susceptible to sinkholes is called karst terrain. And these are rocks that can be eroded away with rainwater. So rainwater is kind of acidic anyway. And, you know, it just, as it erodes this rock away, it creates these larger and larger pockets underneath the soil. So it's kind of like water is your friend and water is your enemy, you know?
Yeah. Like, you ever seen like a heavy rain and then it just washes away?
Yeah. That's, you know, so they usually happen in heavy rain events, but sometimes they can happen in droughts too, because everybody's pulling the water out. That's, you know, what's happening in California. And we're losing, man, parts of the Central Valley have sunk like 5 to 10 feet down. Yeah. It's crazy. Like people, they have certain areas marked, and there can be people standing in there and it's still like 3 feet above their head where the land used to be.
Do you remember the story about, again, back to Florida, but that's because I'm on the East Coast.
Right.
There was two brothers, adult brothers, asleep, and the house just collapsed, and one brother
was gone.
Yeah, remember
that?
Yeah,
in the sinkhole. Yep. Yeah, and they never found it either.
No,
like they never found it. He was just gone. I'm like, how? Wait a minute. Like, wasn't it right down in the hole? You know? No, that
was crazy.
Huge. That was weird. Yeah, that was really weird. So those are they're called dissolution sinkholes. So that's when a solid moves into a solvent making a solution. So it's when the solid mixes together with that soil or whatever, and then they the mix up from the rock and the water, they form like a nasty slurry, and then that's what causes it to corrode in and then just collapse because they can't take the weight anymore of holding up the earth. And then cover collapse sinkholes, and that's like the surface soil is no longer stable enough to hold itself. So that's literally like a cavity in your tooth. It's like being dug out in a big hole underneath, and then finally the top just can't hold it, it falls in. And that's what happened like with that house. So you'd think it would be like right there, you know. I don't know what happened there. So I guess it's different, but those are really common, and those can be really bad. The cover collapse sinkholes. We see those a lot. They make news a lot under roads and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we had some here in South Carolina like that.
And then the last one is, well, there's two more. the cover subsidence sinkholes. So these are holes in the limestone, and usually it's not bad because if like a reservoir can drain off underneath, then it never like fills up and creates this problem. It could always like have a runoff, but sometimes like the sand will go into the holes and it'll come down into the reservoir and then fill the holes where it was like running off underneath. And so the water just starts accumulating and accumulating and accumulating there. And those ones usually turn into ponds. Like when they collapse, they turn into ponds. So that's kind of cool. I don't know that I found like a good example of where I've seen one of those before.
Mm-mm. No, I saw the graphic for it, but
yeah. But I was like, where, some of the calderas from volcanoes,
but that's volcano.
that's really like blowing out the earth and then it fills in with water, So I didn't know a really good example that I could bring of that one. So then there's man-made sinkholes, and these are like old mines, leaky pipes.
That happens a lot in cities, right?
Yep.
In towns,
Yeah, especially
the roadway gives way,
Yeah, in our towns, the substructure was built how many hundreds of years ago, right? And we're like, oh, it's good. So, and then industrial runoff ponds, they can put too much weight on top of it, and you can have the earth collapse under the weight. We kind of had it's kind of similar. We had the Oroville Dam. It was a reservoir-induced earthquake. So they built the Oroville Dam, and then when they filled it, it started causing earthquakes because of the weight of the water behind the dam. So what made them start to do a lot of research into the fault lines of the foothills and really figured out just how many fault lines there were running all through the foothills. It's all a fractured system. And the dam that they were going to build by my house, the Auburn Dam, they were building it right on a fault line, like directly on a fault line. So it's still not built because of that.
So it's not just the fault line you're worried about affecting the dam, it's the dam affecting the fault line too.
Yes, exactly, because you put so much weight of the water. So I found that, that's like real life stuff that happens here. And when that dam did break at some point, or it was a different one, my husband would know it, but it was a huge deal. It definitely screwed up some of the river systems, took out a lot of bridges and stuff like that. So it does happen. So anyway, the last way that it can really happen is groundwater pumping disrupts the balance underground and reduces the groundwater level below, causing the collapse of the soil above.
Yep.
So I'm like, maybe my little fictional made up story wasn't too inaccurate.
I know. Well, they'll have to go to the pregame and listen again because we were talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I know it beforehand or not?
Sarah's so smart.
So some areas are more susceptible to these sinkholes. Texas is one of them that is way more susceptible, and the Ogallala is on the northern end. The southern Ogallala has this karst soil, big time, big areas of it in Oklahoma, the northern panhandle of Texas, and then there's even like some strips in Colorado on the east side.
Yeah, and the Kansas, the southwest parts of Kansas had.
Right. Yeah, not as like overall sweeping, but I was like, does this soil exist under the Ogallala? Because that would make a big difference to know if it was susceptible to falling in or not. And then the evaporative rocks. So they also had that mapped, which if you're watching on YouTube, I got all the maps up for you. But if you're just listening on the podcast, you got to go check out the blog this week. I'll have them over there. And there's a huge channel of these evaporative rocks that goes right up the center of the United States, right underneath the Ogallala. So that kind of answered my question there on, is it the right type of soil to even create that? And Yes, it is 100%. So sorry if you're living in Nebraska and I'm freaking you out.
It's just a fictional story, right, Sarah? Wink, wink.
Yes. Oh man, I had some people that were like go down into Auburn, the town near my house, and they're like, dude, I was crying every time I go into Auburn. I'm crying. I'm like, oh, come on, man, it's just a fictional story. Relax. But what if that happened? I'm like, well, that's why I wrote the book, to get you thinking about it. Be ready. And my next point on the Ogallala is, how would that happen, right? So what would be a disturbance really besides just like pumping groundwater out? So I started thinking about earthquakes, because that's the major driver in my book. And so there's the induced earthquakes that are happening. And they think they're happening because of the disposal of water produced in conjunction with oil and natural gas production. So usually the center of the United States doesn't have a lot of earthquakes. But since 2009, the average M3 earthquakes and above, that number jumped up to 362 of them per year. And in 2000,
wait, there's more.
Yeah. In 2015, it was 1,010.
Holy smokes. Could you imagine getting a pay raise like that?
Right?
Increase.
Yeah. Fair enough. I didn't think about it that way.
That's a shocking increase. That was insane.
Right? I know, that's scary. And they're like, on the USGS, they're like, oh, no, it's not because of fracking. It's, because when did they start fracking? Right around then. But anyway, they're like, no, it's because of the oil, because the oil companies, they're giving off they put their wastewater back into the ground, which causes these induced earthquakes. So that didn't make me very warm and fuzzy. Oklahoma is definitely a major point of concern on that one, because they were a hot spot. But I found this map of like the increase of the earthquakes in the center. Yeah. It's just crazy.
Yeah, when I saw that bar graph of the increase, the quantities, and it's like 25 average 25 year, and then when it was like 300, then it just like blew the top of the graph off the paper.
Literally, when I saved it, they called it the hockey stick graph.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was like, whoa, literally, that's what they called it. Like when it saved in my computer, it was like the hockey stick graph. I'm like, what? Hockey stick? Oh, yeah. Fair enough. That's like nothing to like, whoom.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right? And now, so you have the huge amounts of water sitting under there that we're pumping out rapidly. You have the correct kind of soil to create huge sinkholes and stuff like that. And then you're going to add earthquakes on top of that. I don't know.
What could go wrong?
So, but yeah, so hopefully that was like a little educational episode on the Ogallala. I didn't know that. I don't know. Like I say, I study weird stuff. So I guess I would just assume like everybody knew about the Ogallala.
I never heard about it. And like, so much so that when I read it in the book, I was just like, I don't know, she's making stuff up.
She made up that word altogether.
Yeah, because she likes saying it.
Yeah, because I get to read it on my audiobook. Ogallala. La 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 la.
I can see in my head is that, remember the Minions story, the movie?
Uh-huh.
The little yellow men.
Yep.
They're all saying banana. Now yep. In my head, they're all going to say Ogallala.
Ogallala la 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 la. Yep. And then you could be like a boater on the Ogallala. You'd be like, it's the Ogallala la la. Going into the sunset. Mm-hmm.
Just in time for 4th of July.
Right?
Well, for us now, I guess when they're listening, it's going to be post 4th. But...
Oh, fair enough. Sorry, guys.
We still have time to get down to the Ogallala with our grills and boats. Bring out the cooler.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. It's just a weird sequence of events.
Like, you didn't freak them out enough with the earthquake that started this whole thing. Now You got the people in the middle of the country. They're like, it's just California. We're not worried about it. And now you're like, look underneath you.
Yep. Yeah, there's some stuff sitting right underneath you.
Jeez.
So you're not safe in the middle. You're not safe on the edges.
You're
the
not
mountains,
safe from Sarah.
Well, Revelation is like nobody will be safe anywhere. So
Yeah.
just do your best to be a good person and live every day the best of your ability. That's all we can do.
That's it.
And be ready to help others so we don't act like buttheads when everything happens. That's my hope for everybody. Uh-oh. I think your puppy's saying it's time to end it, Daddy.
Did you hear her?
Yes. Your puppy's like, it's over. It's over.
She's a little person in a fur coat. I'll tell you what.
Nice. Yeah, I'm not really one for small dogs. But Dale and Lisa's little dog, Mufasa, that thing is spoiled as all get-go. Don't get me wrong. But cute little dog. Oh, man. And just so, like, it thinks he's a big dog. So he's like,
my dog will chase the big German Shepherds around the neighborhood. She doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's
like
she's 10 pounds thinking she's 10 foot tall.
You'd be lunch, man.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody like that in my life.
Yeah, right. I met an author once like that.
I was sparring this
martial arts.
I was sparring this dude who's like 290 on Friday. I'm like, oh, he's like a tree. He just has to like touch me with a toe. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's just all defense, man. And try to get your shot in when you can. Defense.
Wear them down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it takes a lot of energy for them to swing their legs for a long time. So if you can just like wait them out and keep your endurance level higher, then it works. Yeah, absolutely. That's how I passed the jiu-jitsu test, was through endurance.
You should get sponsored by like Red Bull or something.
Right? That's what I was having last night to get rid of the pain from Friday. A little bit of Red Bull and Jägermeister.
Oh, God.
I know, but it's my favorite. Everybody's like, oh no, I'm sure. But well, Chin, thanks for coming on, doing some research for the on the Ogallala.
Absolutely. Learn something new every day when you hang out with Sarah.
Right? I love learning. That's why it's fun. Got to keep going, or else our brains, they just die.
Yep. It's a muscle.
Exactly. And so is communication. Everything, everything has to be worked out and trained. And I also want to thank the subscribers. I got a ton of great content last week with Dale and Lisa. We only did like a half-hour interview, and the rest is all bonus audio. And we talked for like, us. We talked like an hour and a half. So
you and Dale.
Yeah. Well, Dale usually just goes away after a while, and then me and Lisa go tinfoil hattie for a while.
I can't wait.
Yeah. And then also want to thank my listeners. You guys are rock stars. Getting tons of feedback again on Facebook and stuff. I love hearing from you guys. It's always kind of makes it worth my while, so I appreciate that. And I'll try not to cut off. You told me that I cut off the ending last week, huh? On YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, so my surviving.
Yeah, right. Like, dude, that's my good part right there.
I practice in front of a mirror all week long for this.
We'll have to do like video one day. You could just wear the Chewie mask or something. You could be like the Ewok.
The one what's the Chewbacca mask that actually like moves and stuff when you talk?
Right. Yeah, that the mouth actually. Yeah, exactly. We'll just put you in one of those. That's all right. Lisa didn't want to go video last week either, so we had all been working hard that day. I didn't mind either because I was in the same boat. So, all right, guys, that's all I got for you. Until next time, remember, dream.
Thank you for joining Sarah and Chen for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, Battle for the South, Dark Days in Denver, and The Endless Night at www.authorSarahFHathaway.com. If you love the Changing Earth series and podcast, become a supporter while you're there. Then head over to iTunes or Amazon and let everyone know by leaving a review.